I never imagined that the smell of spilled red wine on my own Persian rug would make me invisible in my own home. I spent 56 years building every brick of my life. Every square meter of that residence was earned with sweat, sleepless nights, and difficult decisions that no one saw. A retired architect, widowed for 3 years, mother of a son I always thought was too brilliant for the mediocre world around him. When Marcus called me saying he wanted to have a business dinner at home, I felt my chest swell with pride. My boy, now an executive at a technology company, finally recognizing the value of that space I built. Finally wanting to include me in his corporate world. I spent 2 days preparing everything. I cleaned each crystal chandelier I brought from Bahia when I moved to Sao Paulo. I ordered a sophisticated menu from the catering company I'd always wanted to hire but never had the chance. I bought fresh flowers for each room. I wore my best navy blue dress, the one I wear to art openings, with a pearl necklace my late husband gave me on our 20th anniversary. I styled my natural hair in an elegant updo. I looked in the mirror and saw a dignified woman, ready to receive executives in the house she herself designed. The guests began arriving at 8. Men in suits, women in high heels, all white, all young. Marcus quickly introduced me to 2 or 3, always hurried, always averting his gaze. I noticed how he didn't mention my profession. He didn't say I had designed award-winning commercial buildings. Just my mother, and a tense smile before gently leading me away from the main group. It was when I accidentally spilled wine on the sleeve of Jonathan Brecker's jacket, the main partner in my son's company. He didn't even look at my face. He just extended his stained arm toward me, like someone expecting someone to solve a household problem. "Miss, can you clean this?" His voice was cold, automatic, the tone used with service providers. Around us, the conversations continued. Nobody blinked. As if it were natural. As if I really were. My son said nothing. Marcus, whom I raised alone after his father died, whose private college I paid for, who slept in my lap when he had nightmares, remained silent. His eyes met mine for a second, and then he looked at the floor. Shame. Not about the comment. About me. Is there any greater pain than being erased by the very person you gave birth to? I cleaned his coat. I went to the kitchen to get a damp cloth, as a competent employee would. I heard laughter from the living room. Someone commented on the standard of service these days. Another voice said, "At least she's discreet." My dark skin, my natural hair, my age. All of this turned me into furniture, into a servant, in my own home. I returned with the cloth. I wiped my sleeve. Jonathan didn't even thank me. He just nodded and went back to his conversation about market indices. I stood there, holding the wine-stained cloth, feeling the weight of decades of work dissolving into that Persian rug that I myself had chosen on a trip to Istanbul. Marcus approached, lightly touching my elbow. "Mom, why don't you go rest in your room? I'll take care of things here." His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if he were asking me to disappear. To not spoil the image he was projecting. The image of a man who arrived where he was alone. Without a black mother who built every step of the ladder he climbed. I looked at him. I really looked. And for the first time I saw a stranger. But I haven't said anything yet. I just smiled. That smile I learned to use when younger architects, all white men, took credit for my designs in meetings. That smile, that's armor. That hides calculations. Because at that moment, holding a wine-stained rag while executives laughed in the room I designed, I made a decision. They didn't know yet. But they would soon find out exactly who owned that house. I went to the kitchen. Not to rest. To think. The walls of that kitchen were white with details in Portuguese tiles that I brought back from a trip to Lisbon 15 years ago. Each piece was hand-picked. I touched the cold surface of the granite countertop. Imported. Expensive. Everything there was a consequence of decisions I made. Projects I signed off on. Nights I spent hunched over drawing boards while Marcus slept in the next room. He was 8 years old when his father died. Aggressive cancer. 4 months from diagnosis to funeral. I remember Marcus holding my hand in the cemetery. his eyes swollen, the crooked tie I had tied that morning with trembling hands. I promised him that day that he would lack nothing, that I would give him everything. And I did. I worked on 3 projects simultaneously for years. I would wake up at 5 in the morning to review blueprints before preparing his breakfast. I participated in meetings where mediocre men interrupted me to explain basic architectural concepts, as if I didn't have 2 degrees and 3 national awards hanging on my office wall. I smiled when I needed to smile. I lowered my head when it was strategic. I built a solid career brick by brick, drawing by drawing, humiliation swallowed by humiliation swallowed. And I did it for him. For the boy who was now asking me to disappear into my own room. I heard the voices in the room. Loud laughter. Someone toasting. The sound of clinking crystal. Glasses I'd chosen at an antique shop in the historic center. Every object in that house had a story. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every lamp. Stories my son hadn't told those people. Stories he erased with silence. I thought about all the dinners we hadn't had together in recent years. He was always busy. Always had commitments. Always visiting briefly, accepting the food I prepared in containers to take away, promising to come back soon. But he never came back soon. And when he did, he would stay looking at his cell phone, answering urgent messages, leaving before dessert. Was he ashamed of me before? Or was it something that grew as he climbed the corporate ladder? I opened the refrigerator. Inside was the cake I'd spent the afternoon making. Chocolate cake with dulce de leche filling, my grandmother's recipe that Marcus always loved. I made it thinking that maybe after the guests left, the 2 of us could sit and talk like in the old days. Mother and son. No rush. No cell phones. Just us. What a pathetic illusion. I closed the refrigerator. I pressed my forehead against the stainless steel door. The metal was cold against my skin. I took a deep breath. Once. 3 times. A technique I learned in therapy after my husband died. Breathing when the world crumbles. Breathing when the pain is unbearable. Breathing when you want to scream but can't. Except now I could scream. I could walk into that room and tell the truth. I could expose my son in front of his classmates. I could show the house deeds, the documents, the photos of the projects I designed. You could turn that elegant dinner into a battlefield. But I haven't done it. Not yet. Because I learned something working with powerful men for decades. Those who shout lose. Those who lose control become a joke. Those who explode are remembered as the crazy one, the hysterical one, the one who didn't know how to behave. Especially when you're a black woman. Especially when you dare to occupy spaces that weren't made for you. Then I took another breath. I adjusted my dress. I checked to make sure my updo was still in place. I wiped away a lone tear that insisted on falling. And I went back to the living room with a tray of canapés that the caterer had left. I entered silently. No one noticed. I stood on the edge of the group, offering the tray, observing. Jonathan Brecker was in the center, telling a story about a difficult negotiation. He gestured with his hands, exuding charm, winning smiles. My son was beside him, laughing at the right moments, nodding in agreement, a perfect apprentice. A blonde woman in a red dress picked up a canapé. "These look delicious," she said, but she didn't look at me. She looked at Marcus. "You have an excellent catering service." Marcus smiled. "Yes, I always hire the best." Hire him. As if he'd paid for it. As if I hadn't spent hours on the phone negotiating every detail of the menu. Kept moving around. Invisible. Useful. The perfect piece of furniture. And as I moved around, I listened. Fragments of conversations. Client names. Contract values. Confidential strategies. Information that powerful men share when they think they only have equals around them. It's fascinating how people stop filtering when they don't see you as human. Jonathan mentioned a large project. Construction of a commercial complex. Public bidding. He knew someone on the judging committee. Wink. Complicit laugh. Marcus laughed too. My son, whom I taught to be honest, laughing at blatant corruption in the very room I built with integrity. It was at that moment that I made my second decision of the night. I went back to the kitchen. I grabbed my cell phone. I opened the drawer where I keep important documents. The house deed, the property certificate, old photos from when I built this place, architectural designs I signed, framed awards, newspaper articles about my career. I put everything on the counter. I organized it like someone putting together a puzzle. Each piece in its right place. Each test lined up. Because if there's one thing I've learned living through 5 decades of being underestimated, it's this: documentation is power. And patience is strategy. That's why so many people choose to stay here, following each revelation, because they know that real story-changing events don't happen with instant explosions, but with quiet preparation. I photographed everything with my cell phone. I sent it to my sister with a simple message. If I call, answer and listen without saying anything. So I went back into the room. Again. Still invisible. Still smiling. But this time carrying something they couldn't see. The truth, ready to explode at the exact moment. Dinner continued for another hour. I served. Cleared plates. I brought dessert. Every movement calculated. Every smile measured. Observing everything like a director observes rehearsals before the premiere. Jonathan Brecker asked for more wine. I held out the bottle. He didn't even look. He just pushed his glass toward me while explaining to a red-haired executive how he always knew how to spot promising talent. He looked at Marcus when he said that. My son swelled with pride. As if that man had discovered something precious. As if Marcus were a gold nugget found by chance. Nobody there knew that I paid for my business administration degree. That I woke up at 4 in the morning to finish projects and still have the energy to help Marcus with his university work. That I sold my late husband's car, that black Omega he loved, to pay for the 6-month exchange program that opened doors for my son. Doors. Always doors. As if I hadn't been the architect of his life from the very beginning. The red-haired executive commented on the house. Incredible place. You have good taste, Marcus. She pointed to the Venetian chandelier in the dining room. That must have cost a fortune. Marcus smiled that smile I knew so well. The smile he had when he won an award at school and feigned humility. Yes, I invested a lot in making this a suitable space for receiving guests. Investi. The word floated in the air like poisonous smoke. It entered my ears. It went down my throat. It settled in my stomach like molten lead. He was taking credit for the house. For my house. For the space that I designed line by line, chose material by material, built sweat by sweat. I squeezed the wine bottle so hard my fingers turned white. Breathe. Once. 3 times. The technique wasn't working so well now. I went back to the kitchen. I leaned against the sink. The water was dripping. Plink, plink, plink. A sound that Marcus had promised to fix 3 months ago when he still came to visit me fairly often. Another forgotten promise in a huge pile of broken promises. I looked out the window. The street was dark. Streetlights cast yellowish circles on the asphalt. I saw an elderly woman walking by with a small dog. She walked slowly, hunched over, but the dog pulled enthusiastically on the leash. Simple life. Honest. No lies. No mask. I envied that woman for a second. Then I thought of my mother. She worked as a maid her whole life. Large houses in upscale neighborhoods. She cleaned bathrooms for people who never even looked at her. She ironed fine clothes she could never wear. She cooked elaborate dinners she could never eat. She would come home late, her feet swollen, her hands dry from so much cleaning product, but always with a smile for me. "You're going to study," she said while counting coins on the kitchen table. "You're going to be different. You're going to sit at the table, not serve at it." And I sat down. I graduated in architecture at a time when black women in that college were a suffocating rarity. I faced professors who corrected my projects more rigorously than those of my white colleagues. I heard jokes about quotas when I never used any quota, only pure competence. I built a career despite every closed door, every meeting where I was mistaken for the secretary, Every client who asked to speak to the real architect. My mother didn't live to see my first award. She died of a stroke 3 years before. But I know she would have been proud. Not of the award itself. Of the fact that her daughter achieved it. That she won. But now, in that kitchen, serving wine to executives who called me young lady, I realized something devastating. Perhaps I hadn't won anything. Perhaps I had only exchanged one type of servitude for another. I served bosses throughout my career. I served my son while he was growing up. And now I was serving guests who didn't even know my name. The difference is that this time the humiliation came from within. From the son I myself raised. Heard footsteps. Turned around. Marcus was in the kitchen doorway. His eyes were wide. He had seen me leaning against the sink, breathing heavily. Perhaps you noticed the tears I couldn't completely hold back. "Mom, are you okay?" His voice held genuine concern. For a second I saw the 8-year-old boy holding my hand in the cemetery. The teenager who cried in my lap when his first girlfriend rejected him. The young adult who hugged me tightly on graduation day and whispered, "Thank you for everything," in my ear. Did this Marcus still exist somewhere? Or was the man in front of me a completely different person? "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." He came closer. He touched my shoulder. A mechanical gesture. "Why don't you just go and rest? I'll finish here. They'll be leaving soon." It wasn't a request. It was an order disguised as concern. He wanted me to disappear. Definitely. "Marcus," I whispered. "That man Jonathan called me Miss. He treated me like a maid." Silence. He didn't deny it. He wasn't indignant. He didn't defend my honor. He just looked away. "Mom, he didn't mean to offend you. That's just how he is. He's like that with everyone." Excuse. Justification. Normalization of the unacceptable. "And you," I continued, feeling something harden inside my chest. "You said you invested in this house. In front of everyone." He blinked. Momentary confusion. Then understanding. Then something worse. Irritation. "Mom, please. Not now. I need to make a good impression. This is important for my career. More important than the truth." "It's complicated," he murmured. "You don't understand how this world works." This world. As if I hadn't navigated this same world for 30 years. As if I hadn't faced Jonathan Breckers dozens of times. As if my experience meant nothing. I looked at my son. I really looked. And I saw clearly what he had become. A man willing to erase his own mother to fit into a mold. Willing to make me invisible so I could shine alone. "You're right," I said slowly. "I don't understand." I lied again. I understood perfectly. He sighed with relief. He thought I had accepted. That I would obediently go to my room. That the crisis had been averted. "Thank you, Mom. I knew you would understand." He kissed my forehead quickly. A loving son's gesture. Perfect performance. Then he went back into the room, his shoulders relaxed. His smile ready to be reappeared. I was alone in the kitchen. The dripping from the sink continued. Plink, plink, plink. Each drop marked a second. Each second left me colder. More determined. Picked up my cell phone. I typed a message to 3 people. My sister, my best friend, and my lawyer. "I need to schedule a meeting tomorrow. Urgent." 3 responses arrived almost simultaneously. All of them saying yes. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. Smiled genuinely. Because I finally understood that it wasn't me who needed to leave the room. I waited until the last guest had left. It was almost midnight when Jonathan Brecker finally crossed the threshold, still talking loudly about the excellent evening and the promising business ahead. Marcus escorted him to the car, waving like a perfect host as the engine of an imported BMW purred down the quiet street. I sat on the living room sofa. That Italian leather sofa I bought after winning a difficult bid to design a municipal library. I remember sitting on it for the first time and thinking, I did it. I really did it. A feeling of pure accomplishment, unfiltered, without doubts. Now that same sofa witnessed my fall. Marcus came in, closing the door slowly. He saw me sitting there, still in my dress, still wearing my pearl necklace, but with my shoes already on the floor. My feet ached. 56 years of serving others eventually takes its toll. "It was great, Mom," he said, a wide smile on his face. Genuine enthusiasm. "Jonathan loved it. I think I'll be able to lead the new project." He threw himself into the armchair opposite me. He loosened his tie. For a moment he seemed like the son I knew. Relaxed, human, vulnerable. "Marcus," I began, my voice careful. "We need to talk about today." His smile faltered. "Mom, please. Don't ruin it. It was a perfect night." Perfect. Interesting word. Perfect for whom exactly? "That man treated me like a maid," I insisted, maintaining a calm tone. "In my own house. And you didn't say anything." He sighed. That long sigh of someone dealing with a difficult person. Of someone losing patience. "He didn't know, Mom. How was he supposed to know you were the lady of the house? You were serving. It's natural that he would think that." What was I? The maid. Why, Marcus? Because I'm black. Because I have curly hair. Because I'm getting old. The words came out harsher than I intended. But there was no holding back anymore. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "That's not the point. You're exaggerating. Making this a racial issue when it's not. It's not. As if decades of experience haven't taught me exactly when something is about race. As if my body didn't have a sharp radar to detect contempt disguised as naturalness." "Then explain it to me," I said slowly. "Why didn't you introduce me as an architect? Why didn't you tell me that I designed this house? Why did you pretend to invest in it?" Silence. A heavy silence that filled the room like a thick fog. He looked at his hands. "The rug. Anywhere but me." "Because it complicates things," she finally murmured. "Because in the corporate world, image matters. And I need to look. Look like what? Independent. Successful on my own. Someone who built everything through their own merit." My own merit. The words floated between us like invisible barbs. "And having a mother who helped you," I continued, feeling tears burning in my eyes. "A black mother who paid for your college, who worked herself to exhaustion to give you opportunities. Does that diminish your merit?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The answer was in his silence. In the way he looked away. In the shame he tried to hide but which overflowed from every pore. My son was ashamed of me. Not the person I was. But the image I represented. A black mother, single, working. A reality that didn't fit into the success narrative he was selling to Jonathan Brecker and all the other Jonathans in the corporate world. It is at this point that many feel the urge to support this journey, leaving a silent sign that the message has touched them. Because recognizing oneself in pain is the first step to understanding that it shouldn't exist. I got up from the sofa, slowly, as if my body weighed tons. "You know what hurts the most, Marcus. It's not that man's disrespect. People like him have always existed in my life. I've learned to deal with it. What hurts is realizing that my own son prefers the approval of strangers to the dignity of his own mother." I walked to the window. Outside, the street remained empty. Street lights illuminating nothing. Silence of the early morning. The world slept while my universe crumbled. "I gave everything for you," I whispered, more to the glass than to him. "Every sacrifice. Every overtime hour. Every postponed dream. And you erased me. Turned me into a ghost in my own house to fit a mold that will never fully accept you anyway." "What are you talking about?" Marcus stood up. His voice was raised now. "Of course they'll accept me. I worked hard. I deserve to be there." I turned to face him. "Yes, you deserve it. But not because you hid where you came from. You deserve it because you're good at what you do. 'Cause you have talent. 'Cause I raised you to be honest. But at some point you forgot that. You forgot that denying your roots doesn't make you stronger. It makes you empty." He shook his head. "You don't understand the pressure, Mom. You don't understand how hard it is to be taken seriously when you're the son of a black woman. I finished. Is that it? You think I don't know how hard it is? I who faced explicit racism for decades. I who had to prove my worth 10 times more than any white colleague. My voice was rising. I tried to control it, but I couldn't. The difference between you and me, Marcus, is that I've never been ashamed of who I am. I've never apologized for existing. And you're doing exactly that. You're apologizing for my existence to gain crumbs of acceptance. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. I'm not apologizing for you. Yes, it is. Today. In this room. In front of people who will never truly respect you, because respect isn't earned by denying who you are. It's earned by being who you are, without fear, without shame. Tears streamed down my face now. I didn't try to hide them. 56 years have taught me that tears aren't weakness. They're proof that you still feel. You still care. You're still human. Marcus was crying too. Silent tears streamed down his face as he stood in the middle of the room. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to. I didn't realize that. But the words died in the air. 'Cause he knew. Course he knew. He just didn't want to see it. I dried my face with the back of my hand. I'm going to sleep, I announced. We'll talk more tomorrow. That's a lie. I wouldn't be here tomorrow. Because I had just made the most important decision of my life. I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling of my room. The same ceiling I painted pearl white 7 years ago. I'd spent an entire weekend going up and down the ladder, roller in hand, muscles aching, but satisfied because I was doing something with my own hands. Marcus was 15 at the time. He helped me. He held the ladder. He put masking tape on the edges. We laughed when I spilled paint on his hair. When did we stop laughing together? The house was silent. That heavy silence of the early morning where every thought echoes louder. I heard Marcus climbing the stairs. Slow steps. His bedroom door closing carefully so as not to make a sound. As if noise mattered now. As if politeness could fix what was broken in that room. Picked up my cell phone. 3:40 in the morning. I opened the bedside table drawer. Inside was a small wooden box. A gift from my husband on our first wedding anniversary. Hardwood, delicate carvings. A lavender scent that never completely faded even after 33 years. Opened it. Inside were letters. Letters my husband had written to me during our courtship. He wasn't a man of many words, but on paper he transformed into a poet. I picked one at random. His cursive handwriting danced on the yellowed paper. You are the strongest woman I know. Not through brute force, but through quiet dignity. You walk into rooms where you are not wanted and yet you still shine. Never lose that. Never bow your head to those who do not deserve your reverence. Closed my eyes. I smelled the scent of old paper mixed with lavender. I remembered the man who wrote those words. Good man. Honest. Who died too young but left deep marks on my soul. Would he be disappointed with the son we raised? Or would he understand that sometimes children grow up and get lost along the way? Kept the letter. Closed the box. I put it back in the drawer. Got out of bed. Put on a robe. I went downstairs barefoot. The wood was cold under my feet. Every step familiar. Every creak familiar. This house was an extension of my body. I knew every corner, every imperfection, every story hidden within its walls. I went to the office. My sanctuary. Walls lined with architecture books. A work table where I've drawn hundreds of projects. A slanted drawing board where I've spent entire nights adjusting angles, calculating proportions, creating spaces that would make people feel at home. I turned on the bedside lamp. Soft light illuminated the room. I opened the filing cabinet. Drawers organized by year. Every project documented. Every contract saved. Every certificate preserved. I found what I was looking for in the drawer from 2003. Thick folder. Handwritten label. Cardoso Residence. Personal project. My house. Every floor plan. Every elevation. Every technical detail. My signature on every page. Professional registration. Date of approval at the City Hall. Everything documented, stamped, official. I placed the folder on the table. I opened it slowly, like opening a sacred book. The first page showed the facade. I drew that house thinking of creating something that represented who I was. Clean lines but with personality. A solid but welcoming structure. Nothing ostentatious, just honest. I ran my fingers over the drawing. I remembered the day I presented the project to Marcus. He was 12 years old. He sat next to me at the same table and asked questions. "Why this angle, Mom? Why this window here?" I explained each choice. He listened, fascinated. When I finished building it 2 years later, he was the first to come in. He ran from room to room shouting, "You did it, Mom. You really did it." He hugged me tightly. That hug of a child who still believes that his mother can do anything. I closed the folder. I felt a weight in my chest. Picked up my phone. I opened the family group chat. My sister, 2 cousins, and uncle. People who have been with me my whole life. Who saw my struggle. Who celebrated every small victory. I typed, "I need your help tomorrow. Something important is going to happen." Responses came even though it was the middle of the night. "We're here. What do you need? You can count on me." A real family doesn't question things. They just show up. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I opened my laptop. I went to the Architects Association website. I looked for my professional profile. There it was. An old but respectable photo. Complete resume. A list of award-winning projects. Recognitions. 3 decades of impeccable work summarized in 2 pages. Copied the link. I saved screenshots. I organized everything into a digital folder. Then I opened my LinkedIn profile. It was outdated. I hadn't posted anything in years. Retirement had distanced me from professional networks. But the account still existed. I still had connections. Architects, engineers, former clients, people who knew my work. I started drafting a post. Simple words. Direct. No anger. Just the naked truth. After 30 years of designing spaces for other people to feel at home, I finally built my own home. This house represents every sacrifice, every difficult project, every quiet victory of a Black woman navigating a field dominated by white men. It is my most personal achievement. And today I discovered that my own son is ashamed of it. Ashamed of me. I read it again. I deleted the last sentence. Too personal. Too raw. I saved the draft. I would publish it later. The right time. When everything was ready. Because revenge isn't about explosions. It's about planning. It's about waiting for the exact moment when the truth has the maximum impact. I looked out the office window. The sky was beginning to lighten. That deep blue that precedes dawn. Birds were already singing. The world was waking up to another day. But for me, it wouldn't be an ordinary day. Today was supposed to be the day Marcus would find out who his mother really was. Not the silent woman serving wine. Not the faded figure he could hide when convenient. But the architect, the fighter. The woman who built empires of concrete and paper when no one believed she could. And he would find out in the worst possible way. In front of the same people who humiliated me. The difference between you and me, Marcus, is that I've never been ashamed of who I am. I've never apologized for existing. And you're doing exactly that. You're apologizing for my existence to gain crumbs of acceptance. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. I'm not apologizing for you. Yes, it is. Today. In this room. In front of people who will never truly respect you because respect isn't earned by denying who you are. It's earned by being who you are, without fear, without shame. Tears streamed down my face now. I didn't try to hide them. 56 years have taught me that tears aren't weakness. They're proof that you still feel. You still care. You're still human. Marcus was crying too. Silent tears streamed down his face as he stood in the middle of the room. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to. I didn't realize that. But the words died in the air. 'Cause he knew. Course he knew. He just didn't want to see it. I dried my face with the back of my hand. I'm going to sleep, I announced. We'll talk more tomorrow. That's a lie. I wouldn't be here tomorrow. Because I had just made the most important decision of my life. I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling of my room. The same ceiling I painted pearl white 7 years ago. I'd spent an entire weekend going up and down the ladder, roller in hand, muscles aching, but satisfied because I was doing something with my own hands. Marcus was 15 at the time. He helped me. He held the ladder. He put masking tape on the edges. We laughed when I spilled paint on his hair. When did we stop laughing together? The house was silent. That heavy silence of the early morning where every thought echoes louder. I heard Marcus climbing the stairs. Slow steps. His bedroom door closing carefully so as not to make a sound. As if noise mattered now. As if politeness could fix what was broken in that room. Picked up my cell phone. 3:40 in the morning. I opened the bedside table drawer. Inside was a small wooden box. A gift from my husband on our first wedding anniversary. Hardwood, delicate carvings. A lavender scent that never completely faded even after 33 years. Opened it. Inside were letters. Letters my husband had written to me during our courtship. He wasn't a man of many words, but on paper he transformed into a poet. I picked one at random. His cursive handwriting danced on the yellowed paper. You are the strongest woman I know. Not through brute force but through quiet dignity. You walk into rooms where you are not wanted and yet you still shine. Never lose that. Never bow your head to those who do not deserve your reverence. Closed my eyes. I smelled the scent of old paper mixed with lavender. I remembered the man who wrote those words. Good man. Honest. Who died too young but left deep marks on my soul. Would he be disappointed with the son we raised? Or would he understand that sometimes children grow up and get lost along the way? Kept the letter. Closed the box. I put it back in the drawer. Got out of bed. Put on a robe. I went downstairs barefoot. The wood was cold under my feet. Every step familiar. Every creak familiar. This house was an extension of my body. I knew every corner, every imperfection, every story hidden within its walls. I went to the office. My sanctuary. Walls lined with architecture books. A work table where I've drawn hundreds of projects. A slanted drawing board where I've spent entire nights adjusting angles, calculating proportions, creating spaces that would make people feel at home. I turned on the bedside lamp. Soft light illuminated the room. I opened the filing cabinet. Drawers organized by year. Every project documented. Every contract saved. Every certificate preserved. I found what I was looking for in the drawer from 2003. Thick folder. Handwritten label. Cardoso Residence. Personal project. My house. Every floor plan. Every elevation. Every technical detail. My signature on every page. Professional registration. Date of approval at the City Hall. Everything documented, stamped, official. I placed the folder on the table. I opened it slowly like opening a sacred book. The first page showed the facade. I drew that house thinking of creating something that represented who I was. Clean lines but with personality. A solid but welcoming structure. Nothing ostentatious. Just honest. I ran my fingers over the drawing. I remembered the day I presented the project to Marcus. He was 12 years old. He sat next to me at this same table and asked questions. Why this angle, Mom? Why this window here? I explained each choice. He listened, fascinated. When I finished building it 2 years later, he was the first to come in. He ran from room to room shouting, "You did it, Mom. You really did it." He hugged me tightly. That hug of a child who still believes that his mother can do anything. I closed the folder. I felt a weight in my chest. Picked up my phone. I opened the family group chat. My sister, 2 cousins, and uncle. People who have been with me my whole life. Who saw my struggle. who celebrated every small victory. I typed, "I need your help tomorrow. Something important is going to happen." Responses came even though it was the middle of the night. "We're here. What do you need? You can count on me." A real family doesn't question things. They just show up. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I opened my laptop. I went to the Architects Association website. I looked for my professional profile. There it was. An old but respectable photo. Complete resume. A list of award-winning projects. Recognitions. 3 decades of impeccable work summarized in 2 pages. Copied the link. I saved screenshots. I organized everything into a digital folder. Then I opened my LinkedIn profile. It was outdated. I hadn't posted anything in years. Retirement had distanced me from professional networks. But the account still existed. I still had connections. Architects, engineers, former clients, people who knew my work. I started drafting a post. Simple words. Direct. No anger. Just the naked truth. After 30 years of designing spaces for other people to feel at home, I finally built my own home. This house represents every sacrifice, every difficult project, every quiet victory of a black woman navigating a field dominated by white men. It is my most personal achievement. And today I discovered that my own son is ashamed of it. Ashamed of me. I read it again. I deleted the last sentence. Too personal. Too raw. I saved the draft. I would publish it later. The right time. When everything was ready. Because revenge isn't about explosions. It's about planning. It's about waiting for the exact moment when the truth has the maximum impact. I looked out the office window. The sky was beginning to lighten. That deep blue that precedes dawn. Birds were already singing. The world was waking up to another day. But for me, it wouldn't be an ordinary day. Today was supposed to be the day Marcus would find out who his mother really was. Not the silent woman serving wine. Not the faded figure he could hide when convenient. But the architect, the fighter. The woman who built empires of concrete and paper when no one believed she could. And he would find out in the worst possible way. In front of the same people who humiliated me. It was going viral. Closed the laptop. My hands trembled slightly. Not from fear. From pure adrenaline. That feeling of having taken a step that cannot be undone. Of having crossed a line that separates silence from explosive truth. My phone started vibrating. Messages were coming in. My sister. I saw the post. You're brave. My best friend. Finally. He needed to learn. Former co-workers. I always knew you were strong. Now the whole world knows. But the message that made me stop was from Marcus. Mom, what did you do? That's all. 5 words. But the panic was implied in every letter. I didn't reply. Not yet. I left the message marked as read. I wanted him to feel the weight of the silence. The same silence he gave me yesterday when Jonathan Brecker called me, Miss. I drove back home slowly. Busy streets of Sao Paulo. Heavy traffic. Horns blaring. Hurried people living lives that would never intersect with mine. Normalcy all around while my inner world exploded in violent colors. When I arrived, Marcus was in the room. Laptop open. Pale face. Eyes glued to the screen. Mom! He began as soon as he saw me. Thin voice. Desperate. You posted this on LinkedIn. Everyone at the company will see it. Jonathan already saw it. He texted me asking if it's true. That's true, I replied calmly, placing my bag on the sofa. But you exposed me. You told everyone that I. What did you say, Marcus? That you lied. That you deleted me. That you allowed humiliation in my own home. He stood up. He paced the room like a caged animal. Hands on his head. Breathing rapid. You don't understand. This will ruin my career. Jonathan won't trust me anymore. The other executives will see me as. Like what? Like the son of a working-class black woman. Like someone who didn't build everything alone. Like a flawed human being. I stopped in front of him. Try. Or are you afraid people will see you as a liar? 'Cause that's what you are, Marcus. You lied about who you are. You lied about where you came from. And lies are always discovered eventually. He sat on the sofa, head in his hands, shoulders hunched. What do I do now? She whispered. It wasn't a rhetorical question. It was a genuine cry for help. I sat beside him. I didn't touch him. I just stood there, a silent presence. You're going to tell the truth, I said quietly. You're going to answer Jonathan. Tell him that yes, that was my house. That yes, you made a mistake. That yes, your mother is an award-winning architect and you were ashamed of that because you thought it would diminish you. He'll never respect me after this. Maybe not. But at least you'll respect yourself. And in the end, Marcus, that's the only opinion that really matters. Silence. Long heavy. My phone vibrated again. Opened it. More comments on the post. But one in particular made me pause. It was Jonathan Brecker. Impressive professional trajectory. I regret not having been properly introduced yesterday. I would like to discuss possible consulting work for our expansion projects. I read it 3 times. Every word carefully considered. Every comma strategically placed. He was protecting himself. Realizing the post was gaining traction. That the narrative was shifting. That suddenly he was the villain who treated a renowned architect like a maid. And now he needed to do damage control. I showed the message to Marcus. He read it. His eyes wide. Does he want to hire you? He wants to clean up his image, I corrected. He wants to make it seem like he's always respected me. That yesterday was a misunderstanding. Will you accept? I looked at my son. I really looked. I saw the 8-year-old boy. I saw the insecure teenager. I saw the young adult full of dreams. And I saw the man he had become, broken on the living room sofa, facing the consequences of his own choices. I don't know yet, I replied honestly. But I know that whatever decision I make will be mine. Not yours. Not his. Mine. Marcus nodded slowly. A belated understanding gleamed in his eyes. I messed everything up, didn't I? He asked. You made a mistake, I agreed. But mistakes can be fixed. The question is, are you willing to do the work? He didn't answer immediately. He kept looking at his own hands. Hands I held when he took his first steps. Hands I bandaged when he fell off his bike. Hands I squeezed on his graduation day. Hands that now trembled under the weight of adult decisions. I want to fix it, he finally said. But I don't know how. Start by being honest. With Jonathan. With your colleagues. And most importantly, with yourself. I got up from the sofa. I went to the window. Afternoon was falling. Orange and pink sky. That time of day when light and darkness fight for space. My phone kept vibrating. More comments. More shares. More people telling similar stories. Invisible mothers. Ashamed children. Families broken by internalized racial shame. And at that moment I understood something. This wasn't just about me and Marcus anymore. It was about all the black women who built silent empires while the world pretended they didn't exist. It was about all the children who denied their mothers to fit into white spaces. It was about uncomfortable truths that needed to be said, even when they hurt. Many of you have probably experienced something like this or know someone who has. Leave a comment. How would you react in this situation? Sometimes sharing our perspective helps others see different paths. Because in the end, stories aren't just meant to be told. They're meant to be felt, discussed, transformed into real change. And my story was only just beginning to make waves. That night Marcus didn't leave his room. I heard occasional footsteps. Water running in the bathroom. Heavy silence. He was processing. Or running away. Maybe both at the same time. I stayed in the room with my laptop. The post had surpassed 1,000 interactions. Comments kept pouring in. Stories multiplying. One woman recounted how her son asked her not to go to his graduation because his friends wouldn't understand. Another described being introduced as the helper at her daughter-in-law's family dinner. Collective pain overflowing in words typed with trembling fingers. But not all the comments were supportive. Some were accusatory. "You're publicly humiliating your son. This is petty revenge. Family problems should be resolved in private." Words from those who never understood that private silence is precisely what allows public humiliation to continue. I responded to some. I ignored others. Chose my battles. My cell phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated. Answered. "Hello. Dr. Cardoso." Mill voice. Formal. "My name is Rafael Mendez. I'm a journalist from the state of Sao Paulo. I saw your post and would like to do an interview about Black representation in architecture and intergenerational family relationships." Interview. Newspaper. Even greater exposure. "I don't know if that's a good idea," I replied slowly. "I understand the hesitation, but your story resonates with thousands of people. It could help open up necessary conversations about internalized racism and unacknowledged maternal sacrifice." Internalized racism. Technical term for the shame Marcus felt towards me. For the way he had absorbed values from a system that constantly tells us that blackness is something to be hidden, downplayed, erased. "Can I think about it?" "Yes." "Sure. My number is registered there. Contact me when you decide." Hung up. I stared at my phone. Another choice. Another line to cross. If he gave an interview, there would be no turning back. Marcus would be discussed nationally. Our story would become a case for social analysis. Privacy would be sacrificed on the altar of collective awareness. But how many Black mothers would need to see this story to finally understand that they are not alone? How many children would read it and acknowledge their own mistakes before it's too late? I went upstairs. I stopped at Marcus's bedroom door. Light was on, escaping from underneath. He was awake. I tapped lightly. "Come in," a muffled voice. Opened it. He was sitting on the bed, laptop on his lap, eyes red. The screen showed his LinkedIn profile. Notifications exploded. Messages from colleagues. Questions. Judgments disguised as concern. "3 people removed me from the connections," he said without looking at me. "Including Jonathan." Jonathan removed it. The man who, minutes before, had offered me consulting services had severed professional ties with my son. Raw hypocrisy. Image protection without a mask. "I'm so sorry," I said. And it was true. Despite everything, seeing my son suffer still hurt. "Don't feel bad," he replied bitterly. "You were right. They never truly respected me. They only kept me for convenience. And at the first sign of trouble, they discarded me." I sat on the edge of the bed. The same place where I used to sit when he was a child and had nightmares. Where we talked about bullying at school. Where we planned futures that seemed bright and simple. "What are you going to do?" I asked softly. He closed his laptop. He looked at the ceiling. "I don't know. Maybe look for another job. Maybe change fields. Maybe start from scratch and do things differently this time." Starting from scratch. A phrase laden with both possibility and terror. "A journalist called me," I said. "You want an interview about what happened?" Marcus turned his head quickly. Panic in his eyes. "Are you going to give it?" "I haven't decided yet. I wanted to know what you think." He laughed humorlessly. "You're asking me. After all, you are my son. Your opinion still matters. Even when we disagree." Silence. He was processing this information. Realizing that despite the exposure, despite the pain, I still cared about him. I still offered him a voice. "If you think it will help other people," he finally said, "do it. I'm already exposed anyway. At least let it serve a greater purpose." Late maturity shining through the pain. Perhaps that was the lesson he needed to learn. That true growth comes from facing consequences, not avoiding them. "There's something I need to tell you," Marcus continued, his voice low. "Yesterday when you were in the kitchen, Jonathan made another comment. He said I was lucky to have turned out handsome despite my genetics. Everyone laughed. And I laughed too. I laughed at the joke about you. About us. The words hit me like stones in the stomach. Genetics. Code for race. 4 black characteristics that he considered inferior but that my son had overcome by having lighter skin, less curly hair, more European features. And Marcus had laughed. He had implicitly agreed that being like me would be a flaw. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice controlled despite the inner storm. Because you deserve to know the whole truth. Because I'm tired of lying. And because I'm ashamed of myself. Not of you. Of me. Tears streamed down his face. Silent. Genuine. Unlike the tears of the previous night, which still carried self-pity. These were different. They were a true acknowledgement of a profound mistake. I internalized everything they say about us, he whispered. About black people. About black women. About single mothers. About humble beginnings. I swallowed every stereotype and let it poison how I saw you. How I saw myself. Internalized racism. There it was again. But this time it wasn't a journalist's term. It was the confession of a broken son. I reached out my hand. I touched his arm. Skin against skin. A physical connection that words couldn't express. Recognizing it is the first step, I said. But recognizing it isn't enough. You need to unlearn it. Actively. Every day. Because this poison doesn't come out easily. It's ingrained. It will try to come back in moments of weakness. He nodded. He took my hand. He squeezed it. Help me, he asked. Total vulnerability. No mask. Help me unlearn. I looked at our intertwined fingers. Different shades of brown. Different generations of struggle. But blood nonetheless. Royal family despite everything. I'll try, I promised. But you need to do the hard work. I can't unlearn for you. I know. We stayed like that for a few minutes. Mother and son. Wounded but still connected. Broken but perhaps beginning to heal. Finally got up. Sleep, I instructed. Tomorrow will be another difficult day. Mom, he called when I got to the door. Come. Thank you. For not giving up on me. Even when I deserved it. Small smile. Sad but true. Black mothers never give up, Marcus. It's what we do best. To persist when everything tells us to stop. Close the door. I went downstairs. I went back to my laptop. And I typed back to the journalist. I accept the interview. Because some stories need to be told even when they hurt. Especially when they hurt. The interview was scheduled for 3 days later. Enough time for the post to gain more traction. Enough time for Marcus to process it. Enough time for me to question my decision 50 times a day. During those 3 days, the house felt strange. Marcus and I moved through the same rooms, but we existed in parallel realities. He was working on his laptop, sending out resumes, avoiding looking at me. I was cooking, cleaning, pretending everything was normal while my phone exploded with messages from people I hadn't seen in decades. Former college professors. Longtime clients. Colleagues who witnessed my struggle. All wanting to say they always knew I was strong. That they always admired my resilience. Kind words that didn't appear when I really needed support, but that now flowed abundantly when my pain became a viral story. On the morning of the interview, I woke up early. 5 in the morning. The sky was still dark. I went to the kitchen to make coffee. Marcus was already there. Sitting in the dark. Just a silhouette against the window. Couldn't sleep? I asked, turning on the light. He blinked, adjusting his eyes. I've been thinking. Where are you from? For all the times I disappointed you without realizing it. It wasn't just yesterday. It's been years. Birthdays I skipped because I had happy hour with colleagues. Sundays I promised to visit but cancelled at the last minute. Your achievements that you excitedly told me about, and I listened with half my attention, my eyes glued to my phone. I put the water on to boil. I grabbed the coffee grounds. A mechanical ritual while his words hung in the air. Are you making a mental list of your mistakes? Yes. I'm trying to understand when I stopped seeing you as a person, when you became just a mother. Function. Not an individual with your own life, with feelings, with needs. I poured hot water over the coffee grounds. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen. A familiar aroma that has always meant a beginning. New days. New chances. It happens gradually, I said, pouring 2 cups. Children grow up thinking their mothers are indestructible, that will always be there, waiting, serving, loving unconditionally. And mothers let it happen because that's what we were taught to do. To put children first. Always. Without question. I sat down in front of him. I pushed a cup toward him. But I'm tired, Marcus. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of watching you build a life where I don't fit. I'm tired of accepting crumbs of attention when I've given full meals of love. He held the cup. Steam rose between us like a physical boundary. Will the interview be difficult for you? He asked. Probably. You can still cancel. I could. But I won't. He nodded. Understanding without agreement. Acceptance without approval. Minimal but real progress. At 10 o'clock the journalist arrived. Rafael Mendez was a black man in his 40s. Dreadlocks tied in a bun. Round glasses. A gentle smile that put people at ease. He came with a photographer. A white, blonde woman with professional equipment hanging around her neck. They settled into the room. That same room where, days ago, executives laughed while treating me like a maid. Now cameras were pointed at me. Microphones captured my voice. Completely different intention. Marcus stayed in the room. He didn't want to appear. He didn't want to listen. An understandable but cowardly escape. Dr. Cardoso, Rafael began. His voice professional yet warm. Tell our readers, what was it like to build a career as a black architect in the 80s and 90s? And I told my story. About classrooms where I was the only black woman. About professors who graded my projects more rigorously than those of my white colleagues. About clients who asked to speak to the architect in charge, even after I had introduced myself. About awards won that came with comments about quotas and forced diversity, even when quotas didn't even exist yet. Rafael listened. He took notes. He asked questions that showed he understood. That he too had navigated blank spaces carrying the weight of unsolicited representation. And your son, he finally asked. How did he react to the post? He hesitated. This was the part that would expose Marcus most deeply. That would transform private tension into public analysis. He's processing it, I replied carefully. Recognizing that he's internalized harmful narratives about blackness, about worth, about belonging. Do you blame him? Difficult question. Loaded. Guilt is a complicated word. He made bad choices. But those choices were influenced by a system that teaches black people that success means distancing themselves from their blackness. That assimilation is the path to acceptance. So I blame the system. And I blame him for not questioning the system sooner. Raphael smiled slightly. A mother's response, someone who still loves despite everything. Love doesn't disappear because someone disappoints you. It just hurts differently. The interview lasted 2 hours. They photographed the house, the projects on the wall, awards on the shelf, concrete evidence of a legacy that Marcus tried to erase. When they left, exhaustion fell upon me like a heavy blanket. I sat on the sofa. I looked at the ceiling. The same ceiling I'd stared at 1,000 times. But today it seemed different. As if the angle had shifted slightly. Marcus got off the bus. He stopped at the entrance to the room. How was it? He asked. Intense. Were you talking about me? I talked about the situation. About the system. About you too, yes. He swallowed hard. When are you leaving? Sunday. Culture and Society section. Sunday. 3 days. After that, there would be no privacy. Our story would be dissected at breakfast tables across the country. People would offer opinions. They would judge. They would use our pain for entertainment or education, depending on their intentions. Mom, Marcus said softly. I know I haven't said this clearly yet, but I'm so sorry. Truly. Not just because I was exposed, but because I hurt you. Because I chose image over integrity. Because I allowed mediocre men to make me believe you were a problem instead of a gift. The right words finally. The right tone. But words don't fix everything. Words are a beginning, never an end. Thank you, I replied. But apologies need to be accompanied by change. I need to see different actions. Different choices. I'm going to change. I promise. Promises. How many has Marcus made in his life? How many has he kept? How many has he forgotten the second something more interesting came along? Don't promise, I said. Just do it. Promises are cheap. Real change is expensive. Costs comfort. Costs ego. It costs privilege you didn't even know you had. He looked at his feet. An embarrassed boy inside a grown man's body. Can I ask you something, he said. He can. Will you forgive me? Silence. A heavy question hangs between us. Forgiveness. A word that carries the expectation of instant resolution. As if forgiving were a binary decision. Yes or no. When in reality, forgiveness is a process. Layers of anger, sadness, and disappointment being slowly peeled away over time. I don't know yet, I replied honestly. Maybe someday. Maybe never completely. But I'm willing to try to rebuild trust if you prove you deserve it. It wasn't the answer he wanted. But it was the answer he needed to hear. Sunday arrived with rain. A heavy gray sky pouring water down the streets of Sao Paulo. I woke up early. I went to the door and picked up the newspaper, still wrapped in its protective plastic. A familiar weight in my hands. The smell of paper and fresh ink. I went back inside. I put the newspaper on the kitchen table. I didn't open it immediately. I just stared at it, knowing that on the other side of that cover was my story. My pain printed in black and white for thousands of people to read while they drank their coffee. Marcus came downstairs. His hair was messy. His eyes were swollen. He hadn't slept well either. Has it arrived? He asked, looking at the newspaper. It arrived. None of us moved to open it. Finally, I took a deep breath and ripped off the plastic. I unfolded the pages. Culture notebook. Page 7. There it was. Large photo. Me in the living room, surrounded by my projects. Title in large letters. The Invisible Architect, when children are ashamed of the mothers who built them. I read the entire text. Raphael had done a respectful job. He recounted my journey. He cited achievements. He explained the historical context of black women in Brazilian architecture. And then he got to the painful part. The dinner. The humiliation. Marcus's silence. The decision to expose everything publicly. He had also interviewed a psychologist specializing in family relationships and racism. She analyzed the case without directly naming Marcus, but making the patterns clear. Children who rise socially and distance themselves from their origins. Internalized racial shame. A search for acceptance in white spaces through the erasure of their own blackness. The article ended with me saying, dignity is non-negotiable. Not for love. Not for blood. When you accept being invisible to make others comfortable, you die little by little. And I decided to live. Marcus read over my shoulder. Absolute silence as his eyes scanned each paragraph. When he finished, he sat heavily in the chair beside me. It's all there, he whispered. Everything I've done. Everything I am. Everything you were, I corrected. Who you are now depends on what you do from now on. My cell phone started ringing. It didn't stop for the rest of the day. Calls, messages, interview requests from other media outlets, invitations to give lectures, a university wanting me to teach a class on architecture and representation, a publisher interested in turning my story into a book. The exposure I feared became a platform. The vulnerability that could have destroyed me became power. Late that Sunday afternoon, I sat down with Marcus again. The rain had stopped. A timid sun peeked through the clouds. A faint rainbow appeared on the horizon. I received an offer, I said. Consulting for a large firm. They want to redesign processes to include more diversity. They want me to train young architects, especially black women entering the market. Marcus smiled. His first genuine smile in days. Will you accept? I'm going. But not for the money. For the legacy. So that other women like me don't have to fight alone like I did. I took his hand. For the first time since dinner, the touch didn't feel forced. And you? Yes. What are you going to do now? He took a deep breath. I started therapy. My first session is tomorrow. And I'm going to look for a job that values where I come from, not one that requires me to hide it. Even if it pays less. Even if it's less prestigious. Less prestigious. Words that would have terrified him before. Now spoken with something resembling peace. I'm proud of you, I said. And it was true. Not for what he had been, but for his effort to become different. In the following days, the story continued to spread. Radio programs discussed it. Podcasts analyzed it. Social media debated it. Some people attacked me. They called me a vengeful mother. A bitter woman. Someone who aired dirty laundry in public. But many more people understood. They shared their own stories. Mothers who recognized themselves in my pain. Children who realized their own mistakes. Families who began difficult conversations about race, class, shame, and love. My story is no longer just mine. It's become a mirror where thousands of people see reflections of their own lives. And that has transformed everything. Marcus began to change slowly. He visited more often. He called for no specific reason. He asked about my real day, not just out of politeness. He talked about therapy. About painful discoveries about himself. About the slow process of unlearning decades of internalized shame. It wasn't an instant transformation. It was work. Daily. Exhausting. Real. And me. I started living again. I accepted the consultancy. Began giving lectures. I met young black female architects who saw me as an inspiration. Women who didn't need to be invisible because I refused to continue being so. 6 months after that fateful dinner, Marcus called me. Mom, I got a new job. Smaller company but with real values. And I want to introduce you to the boss. As my mother. As an architect. With pride. With pride. Words I never thought I'd hear from him. I would love to, I replied, feeling hot tears welling in my eyes. Because in the end, this story isn't about revenge. It's about dignity regained. It's about a woman who decided she would be seen even when they tried to erase her. It's about a son who needed to be broken in order to be rebuilt better. If you've made it this far with me on this journey, you're part of this transformation. Leave a like if this story touched you. Comment on which part resonated with you the most. And subscribe because stories of real people rebuilding their lives with dignity deserve to be shared, celebrated, and remembered. Today I am no longer the woman who silently served wine while being called young lady. I am the architect who designed not only buildings, but the Renaissance itself. Who taught her son that love without respect is prison. Who showed thousands of women that invisibility is a choice we can refuse. My happy ending didn't come from external approval. It came from looking in the mirror and finally seeing who had always been there. A strong, brilliant, undeniable woman. And no one, not even my own son, can make me invisible again. Because women like me don't disappear. We build futures. And the future I've built now has room for me. Finally. Completely. With dignity.